morning alarm rang through the orbital station like it did every day. Admiral Jake Morrison rubbed his eyes and looked out the big window of his quarters. Earth hung below him like a blue marble, peaceful and quiet. He never got tired of that view. Jake had been running the Excalibur defense platform for 3 years now. Most days were boring. Ships came and went. Cargo haulers brought supplies. Nothing exciting ever happened out here in the cold space around Earth. He walked to the bridge where his crew was already working. Lieutenant Amy Davis sat at her station, watching the screens that showed empty space in all directions. Odorin Tawain, Nick Thompson checked the weapon systems even though they had not fired a shot in anger for 5 years. "Morning report," Jake said as he took his command chair. Amy turned around. "All quiet, sir. 3 cargo ships left for Mars this morning. The mining station near Jupiter sent their weekly supply request. Same old stuff." Jake nodded. The human colonies were still small and new. Earth had only been sending people to other planets for about 20 years. Most colonies had less than 10,000 people. They needed constant supply runs from Earth to survive. The coffee was still hot when the first alarm started beeping. "Sir, I'm getting something weird on the long-range sensors," Amy said. Her voice changed from bored to interested. "There's some kind of disturbance at the edge of the solar system." Jake stood up and walked over to her station. The screen showed a fuzzy blob of light where there should have been empty space. "Could be a comet," Nick suggested. "Or maybe space junk from one of the old probe missions." But Amy shook her head. "No, sir, this is different. The energy readings are all wrong, and it's getting bigger." Jake felt a cold feeling in his stomach. In 30 years of military service, he had learned to trust that feeling. "Put it on the main screen. Maximum zoom." The Rio front wall of the bridge lit up with an image of distant space. At first, Jake saw nothing unusual. Then Amy adjusted the sensors and everything changed. Ships. Hundreds of them. They came out of nowhere like ghosts becoming solid. First 10, then 50, then more than Jake could count. They were huge, much bigger than anything humans had ever built. Their hulls were dark and covered with strange symbols that hurt to look at. "Give me a count," Jake ordered, trying to keep his voice steady. Amy's hands flew over her controls. "Sir, I count at least 300 vessels, maybe more. They're still coming through whatever that opening is." The alien ships moved in perfect formation like a school of deadly fish. They arranged themselves into attack groups and began moving toward the inner solar system. Toward Earth. Jake's hands were shaking as he reached for the communication system. "This is Admiral Morrison to Earth Defense Command. We have a situation. Unknown alien fleet has entered our solar system. Repeat, we have first contact with hostile alien forces." The reply came back in seconds. General Patricia Stone's voice crackled through the speakers. "How many ships, Jake?" "Over 300, General. They're big, much bigger than our destroyers." There was silence on the other end for a long moment. Then Stone spoke again. "We're scrambling all available ships. Hold your position and gather intelligence. Do not engage until ordered." Jake almost laughed. Engage? His platform had weapons designed to stop pirates and smugglers, not an alien armada. The alien fleet kept moving closer. As they approached, Jake could see details that made his blood run cold. The ships had no smooth lines like human vessels. Instead, they looked like they were grown rather than built. Dark metal twisted into shapes that seemed wrong somehow. Then, the message came. It arrived on every communication channel at once. The voice was flat and cold like a machine trying to sound alive. "Primitive species detected. Your worlds contain resources required by the Vorthak Empire. Surrender is the only option that will preserve some of your population for useful work. You have 12 of your time periods to comply. Resistance will result in complete elimination." Jake stared at the speaker like it had just told him the world was ending, which he realized it basically had. "Admiral," Amy whispered. "Our deep space sensors are picking up more activity. The alien ships are launching smaller craft. Thousands of them. On the screen, the alien fleet began to spread out like oil on water. Scout ships broke away from the main force and headed toward the outer colonies. The larger vessels continued their steady approach to Earth. Jake opened a channel to all Earth. Defense ships. This is Admiral Morrison. All vessels are to converge on Earth immediately. We are facing an invasion force that outnumbers us 7-1. Every ship, every station, every weapon we have needs to be ready. Captain Lisa Hamilton's voice came through from the destroyer Valiant. Admiral, we're 3 days out from Earth. Should we try to intercept their advanced scouts? Jake looked at the tactical display. The human fleet was scattered across the solar system on routine missions. It would take time to gather them all together. Time they might not have. Negative. Captain, fall back to Earth orbit. We make our stand there. As the hours passed, Jake watched humanity's first real test unfold on his screens. The alien scouts reached the mining stations near the asteroid belt first. The facilities sent out distress. Signals that cut off within minutes, no explosions, no battle, just silence. The same thing happened at the research station near Saturn, and the small colony on one of Jupiter's moons. The aliens were not destroying everything they found. They were capturing it. Sir, Nick said quietly. What do you think? They want with our people? Jake did not answer because he was afraid he already knew. The alien message had mentioned preserving some humans for useful work. That sounded like slavery to him. By the end of the first day, 37 Earth defense ships had gathered around the planet. It was the largest fleet humanity had ever assembled. Against any human enemy, it would have been overwhelming. Against 300 alien ships with unknown technology, it looked pitiful. Jake stood in his command center and watched the alien fleet approach like a dark tide. In 18 hours, they would reach Earth orbit. In 18 hours, humanity would face its first real war against another species. He picked up his communication device and opened a channel to every human ship and station in the solar system. This is Admiral Morrison. Tomorrow we fight for our world, our families, and our future. The aliens think we are primitive. They think we will surrender without a fight. Let's show them what humans do when someone threatens our home. The first battle lasted only 3 hours. Captain Lisa Hamilton watched from the bridge of the Valiant as human ships exploded around her like bright flowers in the darkness of space. The alien weapons cut through their shields like they were made of paper. All ships fall back to secondary positions. Admiral Morrison's voice crackled through the radio, but there was nowhere to fall back to. The aliens had surrounded them. Lisa's ship shook as another energy beam missed them by mere feet. The heat from the near miss made the hull glow red hot. Through her window, she could see the Earth below, beautiful and blue and completely helpless. Captain, we lost the destroyer Phoenix, her communications officer reported. And the cruiser Denver just went dark. 16 ships. They had lost 16 ships in the first engagement and barely scratched the alien fleet. Lisa felt sick to her stomach. At this rate, Earth's entire defense force would be gone within the day. All remaining ships retreat to lunar orbit, Morrison ordered. We need time to regroup. The surviving human vessels limped away from the battle zone, while the alien fleet continued its slow advance toward Earth. Lisa could see them through, her telescope dark and menacing shapes that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. 3 days later, everything changed. Dr. Alan Carter had been studying alien technology his whole career, but he had never expected to see real alien ships. When the wreckage of a small alien scout crashed on the moon's surface, he was the first scientist to reach it. The ship was unlike anything humans had ever built. Instead of metal plates bolted together, it looked like it had grown into its final shape. The hull was made of some kind of living material that still pulsed with a faint heartbeat even after the crash. This is incredible, Alan whispered to his assistant as they entered the damaged vessel. Look at these walls. They're not just metal. They're some kind of biological composite. Inside the ship, they found the pilot. The alien was dead, but its body was mostly intact. Alan stared at it in amazement. It looked almost human. The creature had 2 arms, 2 legs, and a head in roughly the same proportions as a person. Its skin was gray and thick, but underneath Alan could see the same basic bone structure that humans had. It breathed through lungs. Its heart pumped blood through veins and arteries. Send this data to Earth immediately, Alan told his team. This changes everything. Back on Earth, Commander Beth Rogers was leading a team of soldiers through the wreckage of another alien ship that had crashed in the Pacific Ocean. The military had pulled it up from the ocean floor and brought it to a secret facility for study. Beth was not a scientist, but she was good at finding things that others missed. While the research team studied the alien technology, she explored the ship's data systems. What she found made her call Dr. Carter immediately. "Doctor, you need to see this," Beth said over the secure video link. "I found their database. These aliens have been doing this for a long time. They've conquered hundreds of worlds." On her screen, she showed Alan files filled with information about different species. Pictures of creatures from across the galaxy, all defeated by the Vorthak Empire. But that was not the strangest part. "Look at this," Beth continued, pointing to a section of the database. "They're not just conquering these species, they're collecting them. Genetic samples, biological data, everything." Alan studied the files. Each conquered species had detailed biological information attached to it. DNA sequences, protein structures, even brain patterns. It was like a catalog of life from across the galaxy. "They're using this information to improve themselves," Alan realized. "Every species they conquer, they take the best parts and add them to their own biology." Beth nodded grimly. "That's not all. Look at the section about humans." She opened another file that made Alan's blood run cold. The aliens had detailed information about human biology, even though they had only just arrived at Earth. They knew about human DNA, human brain chemistry, human physical capabilities. "How do they know so much about us already?" Alan asked. "They've been planning this invasion for years," Beth replied. "Maybe decades. They studied us from a distance before they came. And look at this note at the bottom of the file." Alan read the alien text that Beth's computer had translated. It said, "Species shows exceptional adaptability and survival instincts. Genetic material highly valuable for integration purposes. Recommend immediate harvesting upon conquest." The truth hit Alan like a physical blow. The aliens were not just trying to conquer Earth. They wanted to harvest humans and use their genetic material to make themselves stronger. Dr. Rachel Morgan was working late in her laboratory when she received the call from Alan. As Earth's leading genetic engineer, she had been following the invasion with growing worry. But what Alan told her made her see new possibilities. "So they want our genetics," Rachel said thoughtfully. "They want to make themselves more like us." "That's right," Alan confirmed. "The question is, how do we stop them?" Rachel was quiet for a long moment. Then she smiled. But it was not a happy smile. It was the kind of smile that made smart people nervous. "We don't stop them," she said. "We give them exactly what they want." In her laboratory, Rachel had been working on something called Project Darwin's Gift. It was supposed to be a medical breakthrough, a way to fix genetic diseases by rewriting DNA. But with a few changes, it could become something very different. "What if we let them capture us?" Rachel explained to Alan over the phone. "What if we let them harvest our genetic material? But what if that genetic material contained a little surprise?" Alan began to understand. "You want to create a virus. Not a virus that kills," Rachel corrected. "Something much more interesting. Something that changes how they think." She began to explain her plan. The aliens were a hive-minded species that followed orders without question. Their entire civilization was built on absolute obedience to authority. But humans were different. Humans questioned things. Humans felt emotions like guilt and empathy. Humans could choose to do the right thing even when it was difficult. "What if we could give them those human traits?" Rachel asked. "What if we could make them think like us?" The plan began to take shape. Instead of fighting the alien fleet with weapons that could not hurt them, humanity would fight them with something much more powerful. They would fight them with free will. Colonel Steve Parker was the first to volunteer for the mission. When Rachel explained what they needed to do, he did not hesitate. "You want us to get captured on purpose," he said, "and then let them experiment on us." "That's right," Rachel confirmed. "But every volunteer will carry the genetic payload. When they harvest your DNA and integrate it into their species, They'll get more than they bargained for. Steve nodded. How long before it takes effect? Based on their reproduction cycle, about 3 weeks, maybe less if they're in a hurry to upgrade themselves. Around the Earth, other human commanders were coming to the same conclusion. Admiral Morrison received the plan and stared at it for a long time before approving it. General Stone called it the craziest military strategy she had ever heard, but it was also their only hope. The aliens wanted human genetics. Humanity would give them exactly what they wanted, but with a twist that would destroy their empire from the inside. Captain Ryan Brooks was chosen to lead the first voluntary capture mission. As he prepared his ship and crew, he wondered if they were all insane for trying this plan. But then he looked at Earth through his window and knew they had no choice. The Vorthak Empire thought they were harvesting primitive humans. Instead, they were about to learn what made humanity truly dangerous. Not their weapons or their technology, but their ability to choose between right and wrong. And that choice was about to become contagious. Captain Ryan Brooks stood on the bridge of his ship, the Guardian, and watched the alien fleet approach. His hands were steady, even though his heart was beating fast. Behind him, 50 volunteers prepared for the most dangerous mission in human history. Remember, everyone, Ryan said into his radio. We have to make this look real. The aliens must believe they defeated us in battle. Dr. Rachel Morgan had worked for 3 days straight to prepare the genetic payload. Every person on Ryan's ship now carried modified DNA in their bloodstream. To any medical scanner, they would look completely normal. But hidden in their genetic code was humanity's secret weapon. All crew, prepare for fake battle damage, Ryan ordered. Make it look good. His ship fired its weapons at empty space while crew members used small explosives to damage their own hull. Smoke filled the corridors. Sparks flew from control panels that had been rigged to short out. Within minutes, the Guardian looked like a ship that had been beaten in battle. The Vorthak fleet surrounded them quickly. Ryan had studied the alien tactics from the previous battles. They always captured damaged ships instead of destroying them completely. They wanted prisoners and salvage. Alien vessel approaching, his communications officer reported. They're sending some kind of boarding signal. Ryan took a deep breath. Open a channel. Let's surrender. The alien ship docked with the Guardian, using mechanical arms that looked more like tentacles. Ryan could hear strange noises through the hull as the aliens cut through his ship's airlock. Then the door opened and he saw them for the first time. The Vorthak soldiers were tall and gray with large black eyes that showed no emotion. They moved together like parts of the same machine, never speaking to each other but somehow coordinating perfectly. Each one carried a weapon that hummed with energy. One of the aliens stepped forward and pointed a small device at Ryan. It made a clicking sound, and then the creature spoke in perfect English. You are now property of the Vorthak Empire. You will cooperate with biological sampling procedures. Resistance will result in termination. Ryan raised his hands in surrender. We give up. Don't hurt my crew. The aliens seemed pleased by this response. They herded all the humans into the cargo bay of their ship. The inside of the alien vessel was warm and humid, like being inside a living thing. The walls pulsed with a slow rhythm that reminded Ryan of a heartbeat. They were taken to a large room filled with strange equipment, tables covered with tubes and wires, machines that scanned and measured, and in the center of it all, tanks filled with bubbling liquid that glowed with soft light. A different alien approached Ryan. This one was taller than the others and wore what looked like a uniform with symbols on it. When it spoke, its voice was cold and emotionless. I am Harvest Commander Vextar. Your species shows genetic potential. You will be processed for biological integration. Ryan tried to look scared, which was not difficult since he actually was scared. What does that mean? Your genetic material will be extracted and combined with our own. Useful traits will be preserved. The rest will be discarded. The processing began immediately. The aliens took blood samples from each human. They scanned their bodies with devices that showed every detail of their internal structure. They even took small pieces of skin and hair for analysis. Ryan watched as his crew members were tested one by one. Each person stayed calm and played their part perfectly. To the aliens, they looked like defeated prisoners. But Ryan knew the truth. Each blood sample contained Dr. Morgan's genetic gift to the Vorthak Empire. Meanwhile, on Earth, the deception continued. General Patricia Stone stood in the war room and looked at the reports coming in from around the planet. Every human military base was sending messages of surrender. Every city was broadcasting signals of defeat. But underneath the surface, humanity was preparing for the real battle. "How many volunteers do we have ready?" Stone asked her aide. "Over 10,000 across all continents, General. Scientists, soldiers, civilians. Everyone wants to help." Stone nodded. The plan required many people to be captured by the aliens. Each person carried the same genetic modification that Ryan's crew had. The more humans the aliens processed, the more widespread the effect would be. Back on the alien ship, Ryan was learning about his captors. The Vorthak had conquered over 300 different worlds. They had been traveling across the galaxy for thousands of years, always searching for new species to absorb into their own biology. Commander Vextar showed Ryan a display of their genetic database. Pictures of hundreds of different creatures filled the screen. Each one had been conquered, studied, and integrated into the Vorthak gene pool. "Your species will join this collection," Vextar explained. "We have identified several useful human traits. Your adaptability, your problem-solving abilities, your survival instincts." Ryan pretended to be impressed. "How long does the integration process take?" "Genetic material is processed immediately. New traits are distributed through our breeding colonies within 20 of your days. The entire fleet will carry human enhancements within 1 month." Perfect, Ryan thought. That was exactly what Dr. Morgan had predicted. Over the next week, more human ships were captured by the Vorthak fleet. Each time, the aliens processed the prisoners and extracted their genetic material. They were so focused on the biological harvest that they never noticed the pattern. Lieutenant Commander Chris Evans was captured with the second group of volunteers. Unlike Ryan, Chris had a special mission. He was trained to observe and gather intelligence about the alien command structure. The Vorthak society was built on rigid hierarchy. Every alien knew exactly where they ranked compared to every other alien. Orders flowed from the top down without question. Individual thinking was not just discouraged. It was biologically impossible for most of them. Chris learned that the Vorthak had different castes based on their genetic makeup. Warriors were bred for fighting. Workers were bred for labor. Commanders were bred for decision-making. Each group was perfectly designed for their role and could not function outside of it. "This is their weakness," Chris reported back to Earth, through a hidden transmitter. "Their entire civilization depends on everyone following their genetic programming. If that programming changes, their whole system could collapse." Dr. Morgan received the report and smiled. Her genetic payload was designed to do exactly that. Instead of making the aliens better warriors or workers, it would give them something the Vorthak had never experienced: individual choice. The virus she had created would not kill the aliens or make them sick. Instead, it would gradually rewrite their brain chemistry to be more human-like. They would start to feel emotions like guilt and empathy. They would begin to question orders instead of following them blindly. Most importantly, they would develop the ability to choose their own path instead of being locked into their genetic caste. On Earth, more surrender broadcasts went out every day. Entire cities appeared to give up without a fight. The aliens were so pleased with the easy conquest that they accelerated their harvesting operations. Thousands of humans were processed each day. Their genetic material was immediately integrated into the Vorthak breeding programs. The alien fleet became a giant biological factory, churning out new generations of enhanced soldiers and workers. But with each new batch of genetic material, Dr. Morgan's gift spread deeper into the alien population. The modified DNA was so carefully designed that the Vorthak medical scanners could not detect it. It looked exactly like normal human genetics. Ryan had been a prisoner for 2 weeks when he noticed the first signs that the plan was working. One of his alien guards hesitated before following an order to move the human prisoners to a new location. "Is there a problem?" the alien commander asked. The guard looked confused. I am not certain this action is necessary. The prisoners are already secure. It was a small thing, but Ryan felt a surge of hope. The guard had just done something no Vorthak had ever done before. He had questioned an order. The genetic payload was beginning to take effect. Soon, the aliens would discover what it truly meant to be human, and their empire would never be the same. 3 weeks after the first human prisoners were captured, everything began to fall apart for the Vorthak Empire. Admiral Jake Morrison sat in his hidden command bunker on the far side of the moon, watching the alien fleet through powerful telescopes. What he saw made him lean forward in his chair with excitement. The Vorthak ships were no longer moving in perfect formation. Instead of flying together like a single organism, individual vessels were breaking away from their assigned positions. Some ships had stopped moving entirely and were just floating in space. "Are you seeing this?" Jake asked Dr. Alan Carter, who was monitoring the alien communications. "Oh, yes," Alan replied with a big smile. "And you should hear what they're saying to each other. It's incredible." Alan played a recording of intercepted Vorthak radio messages, instead of the cold, emotionless commands they had heard before. The alien voices sounded confused and uncertain. "Central Command, this is Battle Group 7. We request permission to delay the attack on the human orbital stations." "Delay? For what reason?" We have concerns about the necessity of destroying civilian targets. Perhaps there is another way to achieve our objectives." Jake and Alan looked at each other in amazement. A Vorthak commander was questioning orders and showing concern for human civilians. The genetic modification was working even better than they had hoped. On Earth, Captain Lisa Hamilton was leading a small fleet of hidden human ships that had avoided capture. Through her ship's sensors, she watched Vorthak vessels that should have been attacking Earth cities instead protecting human evacuation ships. "Captain, you need to see this," her communications officer said. "We're getting a message from one of the alien ships." Lisa's eyes widened. "They're trying to contact us?" The message came through in broken English, as if the alien speaking was struggling with the language and the concepts. "Human vessels, this is Vorthak ship Thunder of War. We do not wish to cause harm to your people. Can we speak? Can we find peaceful solution?" Lisa stared at the radio in disbelief. A Vorthak ship was asking for peace talks. Back on the Yar, alien mothership, Commander Vextar was experiencing something that had never happened to a Vorthak before. He was having doubts. For 3 days, he had been feeling strange sensations he could not understand. When he saw human prisoners being taken for processing, something inside him felt wrong. When he received orders to destroy human settlements, he found himself hesitating. The feeling was so alien to him that he went to the ship's medical bay for examination. The Vorthak doctor scanned his body and found nothing physically wrong, but Vextar's brain patterns were changing. "You are developing what the human database calls emotional responses," the doctor explained. "Your brain chemistry is becoming more similar to human patterns." Vextar felt a new emotion he would have called fear if he had known the word. "Is this a disease? Can it be treated?" "I do not know. The same changes are occurring throughout the fleet. Many of our warriors are refusing to follow attack orders. Some are even protecting human settlements instead of destroying them." The doctor's words confirmed what Vextar had suspected. The genetic integration process had introduced something unexpected into their species, something that was changing them from the inside. Captain Ryan Brooks was still a prisoner, but he was starting to feel like a guest. The Vorthak guards who had once treated him like property were now asking him questions about human emotions and behavior. "What is this feeling called guilt?" one guard asked him during the daily meal. "I experience it when I think about the humans we have killed." Ryan tried to hide his excitement. The guard was showing empathy for his victims. "Guilt is what you feel when you know you've done something wrong. It means your conscience is working." "Conscience? What is that?" "It's the part of you that knows right from wrong. Everyone should have one." The guard looked thoughtful. "I have never experienced this before. In our society, right and wrong are determined by genetic programming and orders from superiors. But now I feel I must decide for myself." Similar conversations were happening throughout the Vorthak fleet. Aliens who had never questioned an order in their lives were suddenly developing individual opinions. Warriors bred for killing were feeling bad about violence. Workers designed for blind obedience were making their own choices. Lieutenant Commander Chris Evans had been moved to a different alien ship where he witnessed something remarkable. A group of Vorthak officers were having what humans would call an argument. "The invasion must continue," insisted one officer. "It is our genetic purpose." "But why?" another replied. "What gives us the right to destroy other civilizations? Humans have families, hopes, dreams. They are not so different from us. You speak of things that do not matter. We are Vorthak. We conquer. It is what we do. But should we do it? Just because we can does not mean we must." Chris watched in amazement as the aliens debated concepts like morality and free will. These were ideas that had never existed in Vorthak society before. The genetic modification was not just changing their biology, it was changing their entire civilization. On Earth, Dr. Rachel Morgan was tracking the spread of her genetic gift through the alien fleet. Every day, more Vorthak ships were dropping out of attack formation. Some were actively protecting human colonies. Others had stopped responding to orders from their command structure entirely. "The effect is spreading faster than we predicted," she reported to General Stone. "The Vorthak reproductive system is designed to quickly spread beneficial traits through their population. Our modification is using that system against them." "How long before it affects their entire fleet?" Stone asked. "At this rate, maybe 2 more weeks, but the social changes are happening even faster. Their whole command structure is breaking down." The breakdown was obvious to anyone watching the alien fleet. Ships that had once moved in perfect coordination were now scattered across the solar system. Some were heading back toward deep space. Others were trying to establish communication with human settlements. But the most dramatic change was happening on the Vorthak homeworld communications. For the first time in their species' history, different groups of aliens were disagreeing with each other publicly. Admiral Morrison listened to the alien broadcasts with growing amazement. Vorthak commanders were openly questioning the wisdom of their empire's expansion policies. Scientists were debating the morality of genetic harvesting. Even ordinary workers were expressing individual opinions about their society. "They're having a civil war," Morrison realized. Not with weapons, but with ideas. The rigid caste system that had defined Vorthak society for thousands of years was crumbling. Aliens bred for specific roles were choosing to do different things. Warriors were becoming philosophers. Scientists were becoming artists. The genetic chains that had bound their civilization were breaking. Commander Vextar made a decision that would have been impossible for any Vorthak just a month earlier. He called a meeting of all the ship commanders in his battle group and announced that he was ending the invasion of Earth. "We came here to harvest genetic material," he told the assembled commanders. "But we have gained something more valuable than we expected. We have gained the ability to choose our own path." Some commanders agreed with him immediately. Others argued that they should continue following their original orders. But the fact that they were having the debate at all showed how much they had changed. Within days, the Vorthak fleet was dividing into factions. Some ships remained loyal to the original invasion plan. Others joined Vextar in protecting human worlds. Still others simply left the solar system entirely, their crews confused and unsure what to do with their newfound freedom of choice. Ryan Brooks watched this transformation with wonder. The aliens who had captured him were becoming something entirely different. They were becoming individuals with their own thoughts, feelings, and moral codes. The genetic gift that Dr. Morgan had hidden in human DNA was doing exactly what she had designed it to do. It was not destroying the Vorthak Empire with weapons or disease. Instead, it was giving them the most dangerous thing any tyrannical system could face. It was giving them free will, and once a being learns to choose between right and wrong, they can never go back to blind obedience again. 6 months after the invasion began, Captain Ryan Brooks stood on the bridge of a ship he never thought he would see. The vessel was half human technology and half Vorthak design, built by both species working together. The war was over, but not in the way anyone had expected. Commander Vextar, who now insisted that humans call him simply Zeth, stood beside Ryan looking out at Earth through the large window. The alien's gray skin had changed slightly, becoming more pink like human skin. His black eyes now showed emotions that his species had never felt before. "Your people gave us a gift we did not know we needed," Zeth said in his slowly improving English. "You taught us how to feel." Ryan smiled. "You taught us that even enemies can become friends if they learn to see things differently." The transformation of the Vorthak had been complete and permanent. Dr. Rachel Morgan's genetic modification had spread through their entire population, changing not just their biology but their entire way of thinking. The rigid empire that had conquered hundreds of worlds was gone forever. In its place was something new. The former Vorthak had formed small groups based on shared interests rather than genetic castes. Some had become explorers, eager to see the galaxy with their new perspective. Others had become teachers, wanting to share their advanced knowledge with younger species. Many had chosen to stay near Earth and help repair the damage their invasion had caused. Admiral Jake Morrison received reports from across the solar system that amazed him every day. Former Vorthak warships were now helping to rebuild the mining stations they had destroyed. Alien scientists were working with human researchers to develop new technologies that neither species could have created alone. The most remarkable change was on the Vorthak homeworld. Captain Lisa Hamilton had been part of the first human diplomatic mission to visit their planet, and what she found there surprised everyone. The planet that had once been the center of a galactic empire was now home to the largest democracy in known space. Former soldier castes were becoming artists and musicians. Worker castes were becoming philosophers and writers. The genetic slavery that had defined their society for thousands of years was completely gone. "They're debating everything," Lisa reported back to Earth. "What kind of government they want, what their relationship with other species should be, even what they want to call themselves now that they're no longer the Vorthak Empire." The aliens had chosen a new name for themselves. They called themselves the Reborn, because they said humanity had given them a second chance at life. Dr. Alan Carter was studying the long-term effects of the genetic change and making incredible discoveries. The modification was not just temporary. It was being passed down to new generations of aliens, making the transformation permanent for their entire species. "The most amazing part," Alan explained to a gathering of scientists, "is that the change is still spreading. Every species that comes into contact with the Reborn is being influenced by their new way of thinking." It was true. The Reborn had contacted other worlds that the old Vorthak Empire had conquered, bringing news of their transformation and offering to help rebuild what they had destroyed. Many of these species were joining the new alliance that was forming around Earth. Lieutenant Commander Chris Evans had become humanity's first ambassador to the Reborn Alliance. His job was to help coordinate the growing partnership between humans and their former enemies. "We're not just allies now," Chris reported. "We're becoming something bigger. A community of different species that share the same values of freedom and choice." The alliance was growing every month. Species that had been enslaved by the Vorthak Empire were freed and invited to join. Worlds that had hidden from the aliens were now coming forward to make contact. The galaxy was changing in ways no one had imagined possible. But the most important change was happening in the minds of individuals. Zeth had become close friends with many of the humans he had once held prisoner. He often visited Earth to learn more about human culture and to share stories of how his people were adapting to their new way of life. "Before the change, I never understood why humans fought so hard against impossible odds," Zeth told Ryan during one of these visits. "Now I know. You were not just fighting for your lives, you were fighting for the right to choose your own destiny." Ryan nodded. "That's what makes us human. The ability to decide for ourselves what's right and wrong, even when it's difficult." The friendship between Ryan and Zeth had become a symbol of the new alliance, former enemies working together, learning from each other, building something better than either could achieve alone. Dr. Rachel Morgan had become famous throughout the galaxy as the person who created the genetic modification that changed everything, but she remained humble about her achievement. I just gave them the tools, she said in an interview. They chose what to do with those tools. The real heroes are the people like Ryan and his crew who risked everything to make the plan work. The plan had worked better than anyone had dared to hope. Not only had humanity survived the alien invasion, but they had turned their attackers into allies and started a transformation that was spreading across the galaxy. General Patricia Stone was now coordinating the largest peacekeeping force in galactic history. Ships from dozens of different species worked together to protect smaller worlds from the few remaining aggressive empires. What we learned, Stone explained to a gathering of military leaders, is that the best way to defeat an enemy is not to destroy them, but to help them become better than they were. The final symbol of the transformation came when the Reborn built a monument on their homeworld. It was a statue showing a human and a reborn standing together, hands clasped in friendship. The inscription was written in both human and reborn languages. It said, "To the species that taught us the meaning of choice, your gift of free will has made us truly alive." Admiral Morrison stood in his command center, now located on a space station that housed beings from 30 different species. Through his windows, he could see ships from across the galaxy working together in harmony. "You know what the best part is?" Morrison said to Jake, who had become his chief of staff. "We never fired a shot in anger after that first battle. We won the war without destroying our enemies." The human fleet that had once seemed so small and helpless was now part of the largest peaceful alliance in galactic history. But more importantly, humanity had discovered that their greatest weapon was not any technology or strategy. It was their ability to see the good in others and help them become their best selves. Ryan Brooks, now captain of the Alliance flagship Harmony, made regular trips throughout the galaxy. Everywhere he went, he met beings whose lives had been changed by humanity's gift of free will. The Vorthak invasion had been meant to harvest the best parts of humanity. Instead, it had spread the best parts of humanity throughout the galaxy, and that gift kept growing, touching new worlds and new species every day. In the end, the aliens had gotten exactly what they came for. They had harvested humanity's greatest strength. They just had not realized that humanity's greatest strength was the power to choose love over hate, hope over fear, and cooperation over conquest. And once that power was loose in the galaxy, there was no force that could stop it from changing everything.